This evening, I gave my regular weekly summer shiur to the Talmidim of YBH on topic of Emunah, but I neglected to press record in the Zoom. So therefore, this is a synopsis of the shiur, and we were going through, finishing up the wonders of the eye and how it indicates that there's a designer who designed the world. Like Rabbi Chanan said, that it's very simple to come to Emunah if one looks at the complexity of creation. Rav Tzuriel, after he finishes dealing with the eye and the Yotas Musli, goes on to the nose and the sense of smell and the purpose of the nose in breathing, and then he goes on to the mouth and all the amazing things in the mouth, including taste buds, 10,000 taste buds, and the action of swallowing and its complexities, and then the teeth, the structure of the system, and the tooth itself, the wonders of the teeth. And then he goes on to speak about the amazing capacity which we have to speak, to verbalize, and how a child is able to learn that at such a young age simply by mimicry, even though most of the sound is done inside and cannot be seen by the child to mimic. And then he goes on to speak about the vocal cords, and later about the lungs, and amazing aspect of the lungs and its transfer of the oxygen to the bloodstream. And then afterwards he speaks about the heart and what the extraordinary metaphors are used for the heart, because the heart does sense and is impacted upon by the emotion of a person. And then he speaks about the characteristics of blood. And here we spent a little bit of time talking about the factor which causes blood to clot, which is only activated when the blood comes to the surface and not when the blood is in the body, and how that system has to work in that way in order that a person doesn't die immediately of blood clots within the body, and the clotting only occurs on the surface. And then how the skin repairs itself over the wound to the body. And then we went on to the digestive system and how the stomach has hydrochloric acid, which really should eat through the lining of the stomach just like it eats through the food that you digest. Within approximately 5 hours it takes for the food to be broken down. But there's a special lining on the stomach which causes it to not be destroyed by the hydrochloric acid, which again is an amazing, remarkable thing, how that would have possibly been there, and only indicates a designer. And then he speaks about the small intestine and how that it's further nutrients out of the food, and how 4 to 6 meters long, but has these little polyps inside, which make it even much larger in terms of surface area. And afterwards, he goes on to speak about how the blood brings the different nutrients to various different parts of the body. He speaks then about the bones and the skeleton of a person, and how remarkable that is. And after that, he goes on to speak about how the bones are safeguarded and how they are able to regenerate themselves and fix themselves. And he speaks about a person's arms, a person's hands, his legs and his palms, a person's thighs, and the spinal column, and the muscles, the skin of a person, and the heel of a person, where there's thicker skin, the body's protections against diseases, cellular protection on the cellular level. Um, and then it goes on to sneezing, what sneezing does, on the reflexes of the body, on pregnancy and birth. And I don't know if he speaks about the kidneys. I did just scroll through, but I think one could become a believer just by understanding how the kidneys function in removing from the blood the impurities, and then cleaning the blood basically, and discharging all the negative chemicals out through the body. Um, in and of itself, the kidneys are an amazing thing. I think that's one of the reasons why Chazal used kidneys as a metaphor for understanding, for counsel, kleos yotzos, because besides the fact that they look like they're counseling each other, they have this wonderful capacity of cleansing and rejuvenating, which is something which is a true wisdom. And all these things, by the biology, is a tremendous mitzvah to learn in order to appreciate the godless of HaKadosh Baruch Hu and the amazing planning which goes into the human body, and not just human body, but into inanimate objects, and into plants, and into animals, and into all parts of the animal kingdom, whether in the sea, in the air, on the ground, in the different structures which make these bodies work, and these are the various different types of getting back to plants. I think Rabbi Miller, in one of his books, goes through the Venus flytrap as evidence of incredible design. And Rabbi Tzuriel just deals here with the human body, but the entire creation indicates that there's a designer. So we went through this in brief, extremely brief, and we skipped most of the section. But give somebody who's smart the way, and they'll become smarter. And there's a line in the movie Expelled where I think it's Dr. Berlinski there who says that we once sort of a cell as a relatively simple mechanism, and now we know that each cell is an extraordinarily complex universe unto itself. So from the most minute part of the body, the cell, to the most complex systems, they all are wondrous indications of the existence of a designer. Then, after we went through that quickly, we started going a little bit more slowly through the fourth way in which Tzuriel says one can accomplish Emunah, which is through looking at the history of Am Yisrael. And he quotes Immanuel Kant, who is one of the great philosophers of the non-Jewish world, who was not a fan of Judaism, who said that was once asked what evidence there is that there is a God, and he says the existence of the Jewish people. And the Jewish people have been persecuted immensely throughout history. We were kicked out from England. We were kicked out from France, from Spain, from Lithuania, from Vienna. He goes through these dates, and there's a Sefer Minhagim, Makom Shenagu, of the Kila Beshofen, from where the Beckoffers come, the ancestral hometown. And in the Minhagim for Yizkor, there is a tefillah zecher, all those people who were killed in pogroms. And there are hundreds and hundreds of cities. Some of them we don't know when and what pogroms occurred there. Some of them you know, but hundreds and hundreds of cities which pogroms took place. And yet, nevertheless, the Jewish people have survived and even thrived. When they've been kicked out from one place, they've had to go to other places, and there was not, the Jews there did not necessarily have the resources to accommodate them. They had to put in the ghettos, they weren't allowed to build out or up in order to accommodate more people. They were oppressed by excessive taxation. And when it came to Russia, particularly, there was tremendous persecution. First, they they didn't allow Jews to get married till the age of 30. Then they took the Cantonists into the army of the Tsar for 25 years to try and get them to forsake their religion. And then they restricted Jews to the Pale Settlement and Kasher and also Kenya Fruits. Despite the fact that we were tortured and afflicted, we thrived. And all the nations of the ancient nations, the Moabim, the Ammonim, the Canaanim, the Sumerians, the Akkadians, they're all gone. And we're still here. Even Rome and Greece, their cultures have long been eclipsed, and the people who live in Italy and in Greece today are not the same people with the same culture, with the same language as lived there in the golden age of those countries. And only among Jews could you go today and see, if a Ray puts it, if a Bayan Rav were brought back to life today, they would be able to come into the Jewish community and recognize the same Judaism which existed thousands of years ago, as opposed to most nations which are relatively recent. England is only about 700 years old, and the English culture, even you go back to 1066, it's 900 years old, and the culture of the Germans at the time, the Teutons were living in the forests, and each and every country has no correlation to what it was back then. So the fact that there's a Jewish people indicates that there's a God, and that there's a God who's concerned with the Jewish people. The fact that we suffer, that has to be explained. But the fact that we undergo the suffering and survive indicates that there's a God who's concerned with us, and our history is the main history focused on in the world's history, and probably Israel is the state which is reported most upon in the news. It's certainly the state which is the focus of the enmity of many of the most of the nations of the UN, and yet we survive and thrive. So, therefore, clearly there is some unique quality to the Jewish people which indicates that there is some divinity which is concerned with us. That's simple. That's a beginning, but that's obvious if one studies history, and that's why we have Zchorei Moslam Binu Shnos Dor Vador, why our history indicates that there's a God who is concerned with us. That's basically what we did this week, and obviously we're going to continue with that in Yirtzeh Hashem next time.